everybody, my name is Kyle929 and welcome back to another video. Today in this one it's going to be another tier list video, and in this one it's going to be on meta decks post Phantom Nightmare. Yes, Phantom Nightmare is now legal in the TCG and it's looking to be a game-changing set in this format as well. So we do have a couple of decks to talk about here, so without further ado, let's get into the tier list, shall we? But we'll start off with, you see it, we'll start off with the tier 0 category. Yes, I think it's maybe a little too early to put the prediction in, but this does have the most potential to be a tier 0 format, and that's because Snake Eyes exist. Now, with Poplar and Promethean Princess coming out of Phantom Nightmare, the Snake Eyes engine is absolutely ridiculous. And I'll throw all the Snake Eyes variation that's here, so the Fire King Snake Eyes and then the Rescue Ace Dio Bellstar that's also playing the Snake Eyes as well. I will throw them all in tier 0 just because the Snake Eyes engine itself is absolutely insane. Not only does it able to play a lot of hand traps just because the Snake Eyes stuff is only a 1-card combo, right? But another thing about it is it's able to play through a lot as well. The fact that this deck can play through a bunch of like hand traps and still pretty much end on a board and stuff like that is fucking wild to me. And with the variations of the Fire King and the Rescue Ace as well, it just makes it a tad better as well. I think the only problem when it comes to Snake Eyes is its going first board isn't the greatest in the world. Doesn't set up on any Omni Negations. The most you're going to maybe get is like an Appaloosa onto the field. So that's why you see like the Fire King and the Rescue Ace in the Snake Eyes variants, because that helps you try to establish a better going first end board. But again, it's still just good enough because not only are you still ending on something going first, you're still ending on a couple of interruptions and stuff like that, but it gets you the follow-up back. So when they crack back, or that they crack your board, but they can't kill you, you're pretty much killing them through their board as well. So again, this deck is absolutely wild. Would not be surprised if it's tier 0. I think it's a little early to sorry about that. Again, I think it's a little early to put it in the tier 0 category, but if there's any deck that's going to be a tier 0 in this format, it is going to be the Snake Eyes variant. So we're going to put all the Snake Eyes, the Pier, Fire King, and the Rescue Ace all in tier 0. So now on to tier 1 here. So basically in tier 1 are the decks that are going to be pretty much competing with the Snake Eyes. So basically maybe like a counter deck to exactly Snake Eyes. So first thing first, we're going to start off with is Labyrinth. Labyrinth always is a deck. It was an insane deck and it's always been like that, but now it feels like it's really the only other deck that's able to compete with the Snake Eyes because it's able to change its deck on the fly, right? So a lot of people were like cutting the Daruman's last format just because it wasn't really doing anything going into the next format, but now with the Snake Eyes back in format, Daruma is getting played once again. DGGs are now getting main deck because DGG does a shit ton of, pretty much ends the Snake Eyes combo or Snake Eyes turn if you're able to do the DGG. They're playing the Unchained stuff as well, which is absolutely going to be wild. Transaction Rollback still exists as well. Again, this is a deck you're going to have to worry about just because, again, did not get hit in the last list, and it's just a really good deck. So, again, something you're going to have to worry about, and it's going to be a competitor when it comes to Snake Eyes as well. Next thing up here is Castria, another deck that has a good chance of being able to compete with the Snake Eyes. Just because, one, I mean, Shifter is Shifter. I mean, Snake Eyes will struggle through Shifter, right? But two, I mean, the end boards that Castria ending on, like the Fenrir and the Unicorns, right? And I think the fact that Unicorn is at 3 and back in format is forcing where you have to play like 2 Promethean in the Snake Eyes deck. You know, Fenrir is an insane interruption as well. This feels like a really good going second option going into the Snake Eyes format. So again, really good deck going into the next format. And the only thing it doesn't have is a Rise Art. But again, Shifter is still Shifter, so you do have to worry about that as well. The next thing up here is Voiceless Voice, another deck that came out of Phantom Nightmare that's being able to compete with the Snake Eyes variant because if it's able to set up on its spell, or the barrier, the trap, radiance, and, you know, the Omni Negate and low, obviously, that board is kind of hard out because you can't target, you can't attack into low, so you can't prevent the Omni Negate or something like that. And the trap is being able to pop cards. Like, that is very hard. You can't target anything. That is hard, especially if they go full combo and have the Survirus on the field and like the Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph. that makes it even harder. And if they back it up with hand traps as well. So again, another contender when it comes into the Snake Eyes format, but I think it just doesn't quite do enough. Like the Snake Eyes does a lot by itself, and the Voiceless Voice doesn't. Like, sure, ending up on the Omni Negate and stuff like that is cool, but I feel like it has the potential to do more. It's just not quite there just yet. Again, it's a deck that you probably want to pick up, because if they end up hitting the Snake Eyes stuff, this will be a good deck in the next format. But for right now, I think the Snake Eyes just does have a little bit of a more advantage when it comes to the Voiceless Voice. But again, another deck you're going to have to worry about as well. Another tier 1, maybe. It's rough to say, but probably Flunder goes to tier 1 as well. Again, another deck that plays Shifter. Again, it's another deck that doesn't really care about the interruptions that the Snake Eyes set up, like the Promethean and Graveyard. They're never special summoning, so you just normal summon all your guys, right? The End Pen does do a lot, because the Snake Eyes variant does end up link summoning a lot as well. So it's another deck they're going to have to worry about as well. And again, it's another deck that plays Shifter, so another deck that's going to have to worry about. And honestly, I think that's it when it comes to tier 1. I think that's really your format right here. There is a lot of other decks we could talk about, but I think this is pretty much your format right here, is tier 0, tier 1, and maybe a sneak of like tier 2 and Rogue, and that's about it. And speaking of that, let's get into tier 2, shall we? We'll start off with Purely. Again, Purely is cool, but we're moving into a format where a lot of people are playing a shit ton of hand traps, and I'm sure Purely can take advantage of that, because they've always been a deck that played a shit ton of hand traps. But people are playing main decking Droll. This deck does somewhat die to Droll. Imperms in format. Veilers are getting played now as well. That pretty much hits it. Like, this deck is going to suffer from a shit ton of hand traps being played in the format. But the fact, if it's able to get to Noir, Noir is just an asshole, and the Snake Eyes is going to struggle through this through the Noir. But again, I think there is, in fact, enough hand traps in the format that it's going to prevent it from getting to Noir. So I don't think it's as good as people think it is. I think it is a tier 2 strategy, especially since it got hit on the last list as well. Next thing up here is, I think, the Tearlament versions of the deck. I think the correct version of the deck is Tearlament Horse. I think you have to play the Horse now. The Shizus are gone, so right? So I think these should be just combined into Tearlament Horse. So again, the Snake Eyes end board isn't really ending on a lot. Again, it's a shit ton of follow-up, and it is some interruption, right? Unless we're talking about the Rescue, which is ending on the traps and stuff like that. But Tearlament is just a pure gas deck, right? So you're trying to just gas through everything. So this is just trying to go over the board of Snake Eyes. But the problem with Snake Eyes is it's pretty hard to kill, because, I mean, they'll have the Amblo Engrave, they still have Link Rebo in rotation and stuff like that. They'll have the Promethean Pop and stuff like that. So it's pretty hard to kill. But again, Tearlament is just a cool deck, but I just don't think it's there right now. So I think it's just a tier 2 deck. Volcanic is a cool deck. I will give it that. It's another deck that takes advantage of the Snake Eyes engine, but I think these 3 Snake Eyes engines right here, the Fire King, the Rescue Ace, and Pure Snake Eyes, is just better than what Volcanic can offer up. So we're going to throw it in tier 2. Anything else, Centurion is cool. Being able to, Calamities people is cool. So, I mean, that's always a thing. But there is a shit ton of hand traps this format. So, I think it's a cool deck, but I think it's tier 2. Anything else I want to throw in here? Aerodemade Rika. If it goes full combo, the end board is pretty unbeatable. But, I mean, again, there is a shit ton of hand traps in this format. But I wouldn't be surprised, especially in Europe, if this somehow sneaks a top in here as well. Anything else I want to throw in here? Any Runic version, I guess, is fine. I don't want to throw all the Runics, because I think all the Runics suck. We'll just throw like the Synchro Bestial Runic in here, even though the Bestials aren't that great, because there's really nothing to hit off the Snake Eyes except for maybe Link Rebo, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and Goblin Biker. Okay, I'll throw Goblin Biker in tier 2 as well. We'll throw it like here. I think Goblin Biker is super cool. I think the only problem with Goblin Biker right now is Droll is getting played everywhere, Nib is getting played everywhere, and Shifter is getting played everywhere. And this deck dies to pretty much all 3 of those hand traps. So I think that's the problem with Goblin Biker right now, is that. Also, Board Breakers hurt this deck a lot as well because it's not setting up on an Omni Negate. So I think the Snake Eyes is just way better than Goblin Biker right now. But I do like the idea of Goblin Biker, and it maybe sees potential in a later format. But for right now, this format is just not the format for it right now. But I think it's a tier 2 deck for sure. Maybe above. No, I think tier 1's maybe a little better. Anything else I want to throw in tier 2? Again, I already threw the Secret Bestial Runic. I think that's probably the best Runic version of the deck you can be playing. Is there anything else? Maybe Manadium. This is like bottom tier 2. Just because, I mean, Droll is everywhere. And that's the reason, like, this deck does just try to Droll. And that is a problem. And yeah, that's just the problem with this deck. Droll is everywhere. So I'll put it at the bottom of tier 2. Probably not Rogues, but bottom of tier 2 probably makes sense. And I think that's pretty much it for our tier 2. When it comes to Rogue, I'll throw the bad versions of Runic. So Evil Twin and the Fur Hiders will go here. I think Horus Bestial Resonator, I don't think it's really that good. Again, Bestials aren't in a great place right now. So that's why I think even a Synchro Bestial Runic is not in the greatest place in the world. Infernoble is a cool idea. I just don't think it's the format for it right now. Branded Despia, it's always been falling off, and I just don't think it's going to be the format for it either. Dark World, I mean, again, Droll is fucking everywhere, and it's also a deck that dies to itself. Orchist is cool. I like Orchist, but I just don't think it's as good as these topper decks here. Unchained is cool. I mean, it got its level 6 in Phantom Nightmare, so it's cool. I still don't think it's good enough to compete with any of the other decks, but it's cool. I'm down to try it, but I just don't think it's cool. Is there anything else? Exosister, Exosister's all right. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think everything else I'd throw in garbage. Like Earth Machine, it's like there's fan favorite. It's like a fan favorite deck. People love playing this deck. I just don't think it's that great. Vanquish Shoal, I've always been a fucking hater of this deck, so it makes sense for me to put this in garbage. You could probably put this here, but I just don't think it's that great. In fact, it probably just relies on Shifter too much, but it can't kill under Shifter, so like Fire Kings can just wait a turn. Salamangreat is bad. Droll and Nib are in format. Goatee, it got support, and I like it. I just don't think it's good enough. Raid Raptor, oh, this is Rogue. I don't know why I'm putting this in garbage. Raid Raptor is definitely Rogue. Like, this deck is cool. I like this. I like the idea of this deck. I just don't think it's good enough. But I don't think it's garbage, so I'll put it in Rogue for sure. Makonko, I don't think it's that great. Exosister, again, I don't think it's that great either. Virtual World, I think it's fucking ass. I think it's ass, Virtual World, to be honest with you. I don't think it's that great of a deck. Dragon Link. Wow, am I really putting this in garbage? Man. I'll put it in Rogue. I think the disrespect it's disrespectful to put it in garbage. I don't think it's good though, honestly. Sword Soul, I'll put it at the top of garbage. Like it, no, this is also another Rogue deck. I'm sorry, I can't disrespect Sword Soul either, so we'll put that in Rogue as well. Yubel, it got cool support. I think a lot of people are hyping this up. I'll put it at the top of garbage, that's for sure. I don't think it's the greatest in the world. I mean, Super Poly is a card, so I will give it that. Scareclaw, pure Scareclaw, I don't think it's good. And why the fuck is this even on here? The fucking, is this the Hungry Burger ritual? I don't think that's that great. So, yeah, I kind of skipped a lot of things at the end there just because I think the most things to be talking about was the Fire King stuff and tier 1 and maybe some of the tier 2 decks as well. I think this is my tier list. I think a lot of people might hate this, especially when it comes to tier 2 and 2 garbage, but when it comes to like tier 0 and tier 1, I think a lot of people would agree these are probably the top decks in the format right now. Tier 2 might sneak in like tops here or there, but I don't think it's going to be as good as these decks here. Rogue, I mean, I'm not saying your deck is bad. I just don't think if your deck's in Rogue, your deck's not bad. I just don't think this is the format for it. And garbage, I mean, prove me wrong, but I think these decks are pretty garbage. I think the only one I maybe switch is Yubel, and that's just because I don't really know what Yubel does, but I just don't think it will do enough. So yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe for more content on the channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.